Hello and welcome to episode 381 of the Stacy West podcast. My name is Gary and I will be your host for what is the final podcast of the season. But we are planning for next year and we've already been looking at our retained list. The XD for Chris, expected departure, is several years yet, although he is on the radio tonight apparently, so he might just go of his own accord, another big money move. We don't seem to be able to get rid of Charlie because he's bigger than everybody, and Ben, like a red wine stain on the carpet, seems to be going nowhere. But we are adding a new permanent member of the team. Those of you who are watching on YouTube will already know who it is because she's sitting next to me, virtually, of course. But it's Emily joining us. How are you?
Hey, Gaz. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm blushing a little bit. But no, thank you so much for having me back on. Thank you to everybody who sent in nice comments as well after I was on last time. That was really, really very much appreciated. But yeah, I'm all good. How are you doing?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. So you will be joining us next season as a permanent member of the team as well.
I will, yeah. And yeah, I'm really excited. You know, like I said, the last time I was on the podcast, like talking about Lincoln City is my favorite thing to do. So I'm very happy that I can do that on a more regular basis with you guys and get involved with the team. So yeah, super excited as to what the next season can hold for us.
Fantastic. Lincoln City is my second favourite subject after me. You'll find that, and I probably know quite a bit more about me than about Lincoln City. So we shall talk about football in a minute. But you made an interesting comment in a group chat earlier that I need to know more about. That you spent the afternoon dancing around a maypole.
Well, technically, I wasn't dancing around the maypole, but I was at the maypole. But I didn't feel like it was appropriate to shove a load of small children out of the way in order to have a go. It's not really the done thing. But I was desperate to have a go and have a dance around the maypole. But alas, I let the kind of under nines do most of the dancing. But no, I went to a May Day festival today, which was nice in Nottingham, a little community get together, and where there was traditional music and maypole dancing. It was all very nice. But it was absolutely freezing. We were all absolutely perished. Stood outside while people were kind of barbecuing, you know, bits of food, and pizza ovens were on, that kind of thing, which was lovely. But we were all like wrapped up in coats and blankets, which kind of took the edge off it a little bit. But you know, never mind. It was always nice to jig around a maypole to some traditional drumming and violin music, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, drumming and violin music sounds like the sort of gigs that we go to on a regular basis, myself and Chris, and in Nottingham as well. But I don't think I've ever been at one of those gigs where there's been a maypole, certainly not a sober maypole. But yeah, it's bloody freezing. I've even put the heating on this evening as well. So yeah. Lovely and toasty. So,
yeah, I've had my heating on as well. And it was big coat weather at the football on Saturday as well.
It was, well, I'll give you coat weather. I wasn't quite at big coat weather, but then I did have a beer coat on, which people may pick up from the state of the analysis that is going to follow over the next 27 minutes. So we did have a game of football to watch on Saturday. It was Wrexham. I'm going to try and avoid mentioning their owners, and I'm going to treat Wrexham just as a standalone football club because I think it's unfair generally just to call them Hollywood-funded media whores. But you could call them that. But I certainly wouldn't, and I certainly wouldn't do it to the face of Tim from Fearless in Devotion, who we all met after the game and was a lovely guy. So there was an element of Wrexham fans that we are very fond of, and there is an element of Wrexham fans that we are not particularly fond of, which I'm sure we will talk about in a bit. I think the first thing to mention about the game and the final game of the season, as is nearly always the case on the final game of the season when we're at home, was the tribute for the victims of the Bradford fire. And once again, it was impeccably observed, wasn't it, by the away following?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always a poignant moment, and it's always, you know, extremely well respected by Lincoln City fans. But when the away fans give it that, you know, that moment of silence as well, it really does kind of, it really does kind of stay with you and make its mark and just show how important, you know, moments like that are to the football community, when you kind of take the competitiveness of what goes on the pitch aside. We're all people who are just passionate about the clubs that we follow, but we've all got that in common, in that we're passionate about different teams, but we've all got the same passion. And yeah, to go to a football match and not come home, that hits everybody in the same way, I think, who is a football fan. So yeah, really impeccably observed.
Yeah, like you say, it's a good point actually, because I always think that about Grimsby fans. I remember always despising Grimsby fans, thinking that they were a completely different breed. And then I worked with one, and basically he was just me, a little bit better at football, to be fair to him. But you're just supporting a slightly more rubbish football team. And it's important, I think, to kind of remember that when we're about to have a pop at some Wrexham fans, or I certainly am later on in the show, that every club has got its idiots, every club's got its its good fans, the likes of Tim from Fearless and Devotion, etc. But yeah, it was an impeccably observed moment. And on the list, I do have away support, so we'll continue with that. But there was one particular element of the away support that impressed you, and it probably is worth picking up on now for when the title goes live on YouTube.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch very briefly on the fancy dress, because I thought it was just excellent. And, I think, I'm not going to say too much about Wrexham either, but what I will say is that I think it's the media that have made them quite insufferable, not the club and what the club are doing. It's the role that the media are having in just sensationalizing everything. But I'll park that now. That's my little bit said. But yeah, the fancy dress was amazing, and I want to make a special shout out to the Mexicans, the traffic cones, and as one fan who sits a few rows behind me just shouted at one point in the second half, 2 nuns and a hot dog. And I thought that just sums up, that kind of just sums it up, really. I thought it looked a hell of a lot of fun over there in that away end, and obviously they were celebrating, and yeah, fair play for their efforts.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to be the title, hoping to attract the algorithms and huge numbers. We've not only got Wrexham in the title, but 2 nuns and a hot dog. So if we don't break viewing figures, I'm absolutely certain that there's going to be an issue with the algorithm. Interestingly, I did notice that the attendance was 1 more than the Sunderland game in March 2022. Now, I wasn't at the Sunderland game in March 2022. I was actually on holiday in Norfolk, and I was at this one. So I am the reason. Yeah, it's me. I'm basically a record breaker for a second weekend in a row. I don't know if I mentioned it. I ran the London Marathon. I'm quite coy about it, if I'm honest. Don't like to talk about it a lot. But it was a record-breaking number as well. So
yeah,
there we go.
It was. Yeah, it was really good turnout, good atmosphere. The majority of that was probably driven by the away fans, but on an occasion like that for them and like this for us, what can you say?
I thought our fans were good. I thought it was a nice occasion, but football shouldn't be a nice occasion. It should be about absolutely winning games. But at the end of the day, we've been not on the beach. You can't say we've been on the beach, because, as Michael Scabala pointed out, we haven't, and any analysis that says that is wrong. But I think there's been a lack of fear probably over the last couple of months, hasn't there? So we've been able to enjoy these occasions more.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Cool. Right, team selection. I think there was a really important bit of team selection that points potentially to one of our supposedly out of contract players maybe staying for next season. Now, I did get the chance to talk to him last night at the awards dinner, but I didn't ask him if he was staying or not, because I didn't feel it's really appropriate. I wouldn't want him to go, yeah, I'm staying. Are you going to stay in your job for another year? Because it's not appropriate. But Adam Jackson didn't get on the field at all. So he didn't start and he didn't come on. And I wonder if there were plans for him to leave, given that he's at 150 appearances for the club now, somewhere around there. If there were plans for him to leave, would he have been selected or been given a brief run out, do you think?
Oh, that's interesting, because I was going to come at this from the other angle of Pordy and Tom Hamer being included. But in answer to your question, yeah, potentially. And, from my perspective, Adam Jackson, probably a few months ago, I was questioning the season that he'd had and whether he was at the standard that we'd seen of him in previous years. And at that point, if you'd said to me, do we keep Adam Jackson or do we let him go? I probably would have said, let's let him go. and bringing in a new centre half. But it's almost like it's sort of I say something like that and the person's form immediately just turns around, because since that point, I think he's been really good. I think he came in when Pordy was suspended and covered, really well, more than covered. It wasn't like he was just stepping in, like he just looked like the same old reliable Jacko that we know and love. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting way to look at it. And for me, I would be looking to keep Jacko, particularly if there are question marks over Pordy, over Sean Roughan, other players in the squad. Yeah, I think a bit of continuity would be important, actually. So,
well, he's on 164 appearances in total at the moment. And talking to him last night, he couldn't even remember the summer in which he signed. He just knew he'd been here a long while, and of course, that was kind of my speciality. But he's still only 31, so we're not really talking about a veteran defender. And I think in the 4 at the back rather than the 3 at the back, he's much more comfortable. Rather than not having to play the Pordy role in the middle, where, like you say, I think he looked a little bit shaky at times. But alongside Tom Hamer, I think he looked good, and it would alleviate a little pressure on the recruitment team over the summer. So yeah, I just found it a little interesting that he didn't get a kick yesterday, because sentiment would probably suggest that he would come on. We did joke as well, because we've got to mention Sean Roughan was included and completed 90 minutes. But Adam Jackson actually said to me he thought it would have been hilarious if the 4th official had been given the number 23 for one of the substitutes in the last minute, and it had looked like they were going to take Sean Roughan off. I would have loved to have seen what his reaction was going to be. But again, we've got to mention Sean. He was absolutely superb, wasn't he? All season, and another full 90 minutes.
Yeah, another really good performance from Rowan. He's just reliable, and I know we'll touch on the kind of end of season awards a bit later on, but he's just reliable. He's durable. From not missing a minute is just incredible. Really, it just shows the kind of commitment to his fitness levels and everything else. He's playing in a position where you're gonna make tackles, and you're gonna fly in. I think it would have been funny if the 4th official had put that board up. But I mean, obviously, I don't know Sean Roughan, but from what I can see on the pitch, I don't know whether he'd find that funny. He's very serious. He comes across very serious to me. And whether that's just his commitment and the way that he plays the game, it's just he takes it seriously. He takes himself seriously. So whether he would laugh or actually find it not at all funny, I don't know. But yeah, another great performance and a really remarkable achievement.
2 other things I want to just pick up on in the team selection as well. Zane Okoro coming on for, I think it was his 2nd league appearance, but again, we'll talk about what happened there later. But him on the bench getting some minutes, and Jack Moylan as well, obviously continuing his return from injury. Both positives looking ahead to next season.
Yeah, definitely. Really good to see Moylan back in. I think I think I said this last time I was on. We've sort of missed him without realizing we've missed him. It's like an added bonus that he's come back, because I don't feel like we've, in previous seasons, we've been desperate for injured players to come back. It's not felt like that. So it kind of feels like a little bonus that, oh yeah, we've got Jack Moylan to bring on. So that's really nice. And great for Zane as well. But I just wondered, because obviously with the team selection, just going back to Jacko missing out, in the pre-match interview, Skabala said that he wanted to have a look at Tom Hamer and Pordy O'Connor. Now, does that lean into options with Pordy O'Connor? Because it may be that, the view was kind of, he's gone. That's almost a done deal that he's moving on and he's going to leave us and this is going to be his last game. Let's give him a send-off. But then that comment just got me thinking, are there options still on the table for Pordy O'Connor at Lincoln City?
It's interesting. I mean, I'm assuming we're still trying to get him to stay. Obviously he was there last night. There was 1 or 2 players who were not at the awards dinner last night. One of those being Ethan Roughan. Obviously, he did get some minutes as well. But I thought it interesting that he wasn't at the awards. Let's pick up on the game then, because we can talk about the retained lists and such. For as long as we could, but until they come out, we'll probably be on the wise. We don't know who's got options, what's on the table. But the first thing I have got is first half dominance. Now, I think Wrexham had 2 shots, none on target. The extended highlights showed one shot from each side. But we had a collection of half chances. James Collins probably having the most of them. But we looked in control, didn't we? We were playing nice football, getting the ball in the box. But like for many on many occasions this season, probably just lacking that killer edge, which you can maybe forgive in the 46th game of the season when the only thing on the table is whether you get more points than Mark Kennedy got or not one season.
Yes, we were dominant. We dominated possession. I think our possession was something like 60% in the stats. And I think we looked good. We were playing the ball around. I mean, whether Wrexham whether they were on the beach for the first half, I don't know. But we were good. We were in control of the game. We were playing it about, but it was just that cutting edge that was missing. And I think, I watched the extended highlights yesterday, and the fact that they didn't really show anything from the first half, it sort of summed it up for me. It was, there was lots of good play, and at half time I thought, yeah, that's a good half. But then when you look back at it, there weren't any highlights, so to speak. There were no clear-cut chances. Lots of, not even a half chance, maybe a quarter chance, if that's a thing that exists. Balls going across the box, nobody getting on the end of them. Final balls, a bit, wrong decision making, that sort of thing. And I think there was lots of chances where we were coming forward, but the players were kind of, I wanted them to shoot, really. I wanted them to just have a shot. I think James Collins is very much a shoot on sight kind of player. If he gets the ball and he's on the goal, he's going to go for it. But then there was a few players, I just thought, just have the confidence to hit it, and it didn't look like they did. And I think, that's telling as well. Perhaps it is that point in the season, like you say.
Yeah, I mean, Wrexham were a decent defensive side as well. I think that there wasn't an awful lot of space in behind where there has been in recent weeks. Their keeper's obviously a strong keeper, didn't particularly have saves to make. But we definitely created more chances, and kind of sitting and watching the first half, I genuinely felt that the game would probably end up going in our favour if we came out and did the same in the second half, which is stupid because I've watched enough Lincoln this season and last season and the season before to know that we never do in the second half what we've done in the first half of games. But yeah, I just felt that there was no stress, but I also didn't feel that there was if the game was just a standalone game rather than the last one of the season. I just felt we played really well. And I think when you look at Wrexham have gone up, they'll be championship next season, second biggest budget in the division, twice the budget, the wage budget that we've got. And that's not pleading poverty. It's just fact. They create their money. I know that you particularly said there that the media have created the spin. Yes, they have. Whereas the owners actually have been quite savvy in putting the loans in and taking the money back out and exploring the commercial angle. So I'm not having a pop at them having the money at all. It's not jealousy. But in 180 minutes of football against them, we've probably been at least the better side, or at least matched them, if not the better side, in for 135 minutes. That's why I do words and not maths, you see. It was
in 3 quarters across 2 games is kind of how I was going to come at it from, if that's
the easier way.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
75% of the time. But that was the case, wasn't it? In the first half, we did match them, like you say. We didn't quite have the killer edge, but defensively, again, the 4 at the back looked relatively solid.
Yeah, they did look solid. I think, we didn't have the cutting edge to get that goal that we needed and take those chances. But yeah, I think you're right in that we can't ignore the fact that Wrexham didn't have a chance. They had even less chances. So I think that's, testament to how we set up and our defensive play in kind of keeping them at bay, because we know what they can do. They're going to be a championship team next season for a reason. So yeah, I think that we did well to keep them at bay and to be so attacking, despite the fact we didn't have that edge. And I think it's interesting, there's lots of comments this season about Lincoln City being inconsistent in their performances. But it's interesting what you say there about, I've watched enough Lincoln City to know we don't do the same thing in the second half that we've done in the first half. That's sort of a consistency in a way, isn't it? I know it's not the kind of consistency we want, but there's a consistency. We're consistently doing that, which I just think is an interesting observation.
We are consistently inconsistent, I think is probably the best way to put it. That's 2 titles that we've got for the podcast this week. That's brilliant. So halftime came, and I did something I have only done once before this season, and that is go into the fan zone at halftime for a drink. Now, didn't. I, I'm going to have a little bit of a moan because, and it's such a hypocritical thing, but honestly, I cannot understand people like me on the last game of the season who stream out on 35 minutes, queue, have 2 pints, and then miss a goal. But the fan zone was heaving. I don't know if that's just because of the final day or not, but yeah, it wasn't even a nice day, was it? It was chilly. And all the poor, I mean, because I went all the way to the end of the stand and down, so I didn't particularly block anybody's view. But I do I don't understand it. I was moaning about it all night, even though I was one of the worst offenders. But yeah, it's just a striking observation. So many people just are there for the drink and not the football, aren't they?
Well, I have to say, I am very much. I get to my seat and I am there until the referee blows his whistle. I don't move at half time. I'm there. I don't move, so I can't really comment. But there's a really nice kind of. We've almost got a routine where we sit. We know who gets up when. We know that when it hits sort of 35 minutes, he's going to be up in a minute every time. We've got a little routine, so we know who's up when. And there's kind of a collective, sarcastic groan and jeer at people getting up and moving down. But no, I don't move. I stay in my seat, so I can't really comment on the state of the fan zone and missing goals. But there we go. I'm sure apart from missing goals, it's all good fun.
Anyway, we'll move on to that because we're back onto the football. We've got JRS Special commenting, who's brilliant because he's heavily critical all the time of the podcast. But every week he's here, so he's helping our algorithms and our numbers, which is fantastic. So thank you for that, JRS Special or JRS Tuber or whatever you are calling yourself now. It's nice to have you on board. Now, he's actually blamed Roughan for the first goal. Now, I've watched the first goal back. Roughan didn't stop the cross. I think a fullback not stopping a cross is something that happens. For me, there is blame because Elliot Lee's come steaming in from nowhere with a free header. Watching it back, I'm even wondering if it might have been Ethan Roughan who should have been tracking him, who seemed to be an awful long way forward. But after they created literally nothing at all, to be fair, there was two. To be fair, I skipped ahead a little bit because there was two chances either end. Both teams came out looking like they wanted it. But then a weak goal to concede, or is that a little bit harsh?
I think it is a weak goal to concede. I think I'm with you. I watched the replay back and thought that perhaps there could be some blame on Ethan Roughan. It looks like he steps up to press their player who's got the ball. That might even be Lee, actually, because I know he released it and then ran into the box and got on the end of the header, which is, can't argue with that from him. But I think Roughan pressed up and then that left a gap in behind. So I don't know whether Hamilton should have been coming across and covering that or there should have been somebody there. But you can often tell, can't you, by players' reactions. So when that goal went in, Roughan was kind of waving his arms around, whether that was with his own frustration with himself, at somebody else who he thought should have been somewhere else. I don't know. But it was a decent cross. It was a good cross, a good header. Elliot Lee got in between our defenders and just was unmarked at that point. So I can't argue with that part of it. But yeah, there was a big gap created in the middle, possibly one of the Ethans. But yeah, disappointing to concede because I think we had a few chances at the beginning of that half. Again, no real cutting edge. I think there was a moment where I think Sean Rowan played a cross into the box, and from where I was sitting, I could just see Rico Hackett's leg just sort of stretching out. Didn't get on the end of it, and it went behind for a goal kick. But we were looking, lively again. And then, a sucker punch really because they'd had nothing. It was their first chance really, and they buried it.
Yeah, and then unfortunately 8 minutes later they did it again to condemn us to our second 2-0 defeat on the final day of the season against the team being promoted to Championship in a row, and that is a real mouthful. This is a goal that, in my opinion, was made by the exquisite skills of one of the most hated men on the pitch in James McLean, but there's absolutely no arguing with this. I mean, I have seen people again trying to blame individuals, but it's just, for me, it's just a great team goal, and that's probably what money buys you. Do you know what I mean? It was just the quality on the ball, and that's probably why Wrexham are going up to the Championship, and the likes, even you could argue with Bolton and Huddersfield aren't, because they've just had that quality probably all season when they've needed to call on it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that is a real. That's the difference between us and them, ultimately, isn't it? And I think it's been a similar story in other games. I mean, I remember when we played Birmingham, and I think on a performance level, we matched them. I thought we played really well up against them, but the chances they had, they absolutely buried in the bottom corner, and they were clinical about it, and we weren't. And I feel like that's been a similar trend. And yeah, is it money that gets you that? Maybe.
Confidence, maybe.
Is it confidence? Yeah, it could be a whole all manner of things that we don't particularly possess or haven't possessed this season. In with regards to their goal, they moved the ball really well to kind of get it over to that right hand side, and the finish was a really good finish. Watching it in real time, I felt like the distribution from Wickens felt really slow. I mean, I watched the replay back and sort of thought, I don't know if this judgment doesn't really feel like that watching the replay. But at the time, I sort of thought there was a quick ball onto Gardner. He didn't choose to play it. And you could see him looking for options. And there wasn't a lot of movement. And he was looking where to play it, rolled it out to Derikwa, who played it to Moylan, who was on his heels. That gave the ball away. And it kind of, then their move started from there. So that just looked a bit sloppy, a little bit sluggish to me, a bit slow out the blocks. So, there was a lot happened between that and them putting the ball in the back of the net. But at the time watching it live, I remember thinking, we just held on to those passes just a little bit too long, and yeah, it led to them scoring a goal.
Yeah, and on my notes now, I've just got what was the point after that, which I know feels really harsh, but they were already promoted. They were loving it. There was a little bit of an issue in the stands near me. There was a guy who sits close to me all season, had a few beers as I had, and he and I were having some interested heated discussions, and his dad sits in between us, and he got up and walked away. And the guy in front turned around and said, I don't know how you put up with sitting next to that prick every week, but not realizing, I assume, that it's his dad that sits next to me. So I began to lose a little bit of interest in the game then as well, because these are all people that have sat around us for a couple of years who don't normally talk. So it all got a little bit, a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah, a little bit tense.
Yeah,
so,
making uncomfortable conversation with people that you see week in, week out, but make a choice never to speak to.
Yeah,
yeah, that's a lot.
One thing I think I did note was, we've mentioned Moylan, but I wanted to touch on him because there's something about Jack Moylan. I mean, he obviously, I think he took a free kick late on that went just over. He had a chance that just went over as well after he came on. There's a couple of players I've looked at and thought they could be big for next season. I think Jack Moylan would have been better this season had he not been blighted by injury. And there's a couple of people who could talk about that. I think Eric Ring is a player who could be big for us next season. But I think Jack showed glimpses. When you look down the chances on Y-Scout, the first half, it was more or less all James Collins. The odd one here and there from others, but James Collins seemed to be the main one. The second half, it was really Moylan. And that 10 role is going to be even more vital next season, because playing just behind a striker, it's ideal and perfect, I think, for Jack Moylan. He's going to have potentially Ben House fighting for that, potentially JJ McKiernan. But I think it was really interesting to see Moylan come on and have an impact on the game.
Yeah, he did. He came on, and like you say, he had a couple of efforts. And I think when Jack comes on, he's got that sort of persona. He gets you off your seat because he likes to pick up the ball, he likes to run with it. And he's another one that he quite likes to shoot on sight as well. If he can get in the position where he's in front of goal, he often likes to have a go. Sometimes they go high, wide and handsome. But there's been those moments where he's just absolutely wellied it and it's just gone top corner or something like that. And we can all remember those goals and those moments. And I think that's what it is. He gets you off your seat. He gets you excited when he picks up the ball. And I think, it'd be great to see more of that from him next season. And I think he goes through spells, he goes through spells where he will find the net, all the time in games. And then there'll be spells where he doesn't. And actually having him in that number 10 role next season hopefully that'll be really good for us, because I think that obviously Ben House has played there, Enrico Hackett has played there. I don't think those two players have contributed with goals as much as I would have hoped, really. So if Jack can play in that role and score the goals as well, then we'll have a hell of a player on our hands next season.
And all I will say, having had a discussion, I don't know if Steve's listening, with a guy called Steve, last night on the foundation table. 4-2-3-1. Let's not kid ourselves. It's 4-4-2, isn't it? Even if one striker plays behind the other, it's 4-4-2. You can arrange the numbers however you want, and Chris will be wherever he is at the moment. Will be tearing his hair out at that. But it's almost a 4-4-2. After that, I did leave. It's the earliest I've left the game since we lost 6-0 to Rotherham on a cold Tuesday night in 2011. Mainly because of the slight issues that were going on around me, mainly because the last thing I wanted was to watch another team celebrating promotion at Sincil Bank while we all sit around waiting for the inevitable Tendai Doriqua Player of the Year award. So I went into the fan zone. Before we pick up on the Player of the Year, I can't remember if you and your dad had joined us at this point or not, but a few Wrexham fans spoiling for a fight when they came through the fan zone.
Oh no, hadn't seen that bit.
Yeah, so a few of them coming through dressed as clowns and acting like clowns, shouting all sorts of negative stuff about Lincoln rather than positive stuff about themselves. One or two Lincoln fans who had had a few beers squaring up to them, and it was 3 or 4 occasions. I was told there was a little bit of trouble in town last night as well. Just find that a little bit of a shame. You would have thought they would have been in a party atmosphere, not an atmosphere to start fights while dressed in fancy dress. And again, we spoke to some great Wrexham fans there who were in the right mood, but it's just a shame that there always seems to be knobheads ready to ruin it for everybody else.
Yeah, there's always a few idiots, but there seem to be some kind of that sort of good banter between the fans where it's not too bad, but there's always a few that are kind of squaring up to our fans. And my dad turned to me and he said, "Can you really take somebody asking for a fight seriously if they're dressed as Super Mario?" No, you can't really, can you? So
no. Yeah, idiots. So while that was happening, there was the official Player of the Season award. Now, I avoided those, I'd like to say on purpose, because I knew that I'd had a really gracious invite from the foundation to be on their table at the awards dinner, and I didn't want to. It was like watching the results before you watch Match of the Day, so I kind of wanted to stay out of all of that. But Tendai got Player of the Year, which I don't think is any surprise in terms of the fan vote. But last night he was also given Players' Player of the Year, which is one that I think he said that he was more delighted to get, because obviously the respect of one's peers is something that everybody craves. There wasn't really anybody else, was there, that was going to win it? I mean, we talk a little bit about Pordy, but he's got the red cards. Obviously, I do like Sean Jovan, but he kind of came into the season. Tendai was the only real contender, wasn't he, with his goals and assists as well?
Yeah, Tendai got my vote. It was close between him and Sean Rowan for me, but it was the goals. Tendai contributing the goals just slightly edged him above Sean. And just a thoroughly deserved winner. I think he must have played nearly all the games. I know he had a break when one of his children was born, but I don't know if he missed any others other than that off the top of my head in the league anyway. So he's,
started 44 games for us in the league,
which is another great stat for somebody of his age. I don't want to make him sound like he's ancient, but you know what I mean, of his experience, let's say that. And the players one's really important as well, like you say. And he did the post-match interview after the Wrexham game on Radio Lincolnshire, and he talks really well. You can tell by the way that he talks that he's got that maturity, that experience. And I'm sure he's having a massive influence on the younger players in the squad, and he just comes across so well in those roles. So I'm not surprised he won Players' Player either, really.
And funnily enough, I was chatting to Tendai at a sponsors event at the beginning of the season, and he was singing the praises of Jovan McCarmer, saying, he's a special boy. I've seen plenty of him in pre-season. He's got loads of ability. I'm going to try and work with him and bring him on. And it was even mentioned on stage last night. He was saying about how he's tried to be a bit of a role model. Jovan picked up Young Player of the Year last night, leading goal scorer as well. Now, for a player to come out of the academy and win Young Player of the Year and win leading goal scorer and be Player of the Month for all of the EFL and have his little FIFA card, for me it's incredible that all the fan base are not standing on the rooftop shouting about this fine young man. However, when he went to collect his award on stage last night, he had slip-on loafers and no socks. So I'm done with him, basically, because Honestly, unbelievable. But no, seriously, again, well earned, wasn't it? Well earned.
Yeah, well earned. I'm a fan of Jovan. I know that the podcast are as well, so I'm not just coming in to say that. I am. I think he's had a good season. And you just think about where he was this time last season. He'd been thrown in at the deep end and was this, I don't, no disrespect to him, but to kind of use metaphors. And he was a young boy, coming into a team and expected to do a job, and he was learning. And to look at that now, his improvement has been incredible. And I think that now, to lose him to injury, like, you felt it actually. And like I say, we've not been desperate for players to come back from injury this season, but he's one where you felt like, oh yeah, we're missing Jovan. Could do with Jovan coming on or whatever. And I think that just goes to show the impact that he's had this season. That, maybe at the beginning of the season we were all thinking that he was this kid that we'd thrown in to fill our gap of strikers last season, and now at the end of this season he's injured and we're wishing he was playing, or I certainly am anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Just to also point out, Freddie Draper also had slip-on loafers, and I think they're called loafers. I don't know, and no socks either.
Maybe it's something that like young people wear, and we've missed it.
Ouch. Well, I've been trying to debate whether with my trainers to wear like those little trainer socks that don't come up your ankles, or actual socks that do come up your ankles a little bit. And I can't decide, because every time I wear the socks that come up my ankles, my friends tell me I look like I've lost my skateboard, which is a little bit painful. So, right, we are coming up to, I don't know where that time has gone, 37 minutes. So we will go for a break if you are listening at home. And if you are watching online and arguing in the comments, as some people are, we'll have a look through some of those. So we'll be back in a second. 36:55. I won't pick up on the argument in the comments. So what do we have? I'm going to not pick all of them out. But Richard Godson congratulates me for correctly predicting at the start of the season an 11th place finish for Lincoln. Thank you very much, Richard. We have Flossy Tops for the last time this season. Good evening, everyone. We are going to try and do one show a week throughout the summer. So we are going to try and keep you engaged. This is probably Ben, just like a red wine stain. Some cheap white wine will have me disappearing from public view for quite a while. Well, some rather expensive vodka and lemonade had me doing exactly the same. Paul Stalabras says, hi, Emily. I hope you can keep the fearsome foursome under control.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. With the title like Two Nuns and a Hot Dog as well. It's all getting a little bit heated in here. Lots of people commenting. Obviously, just going to keep dropping down. Jacob Langham, massive supporter of the podcast, always watches. So hi, Jacob. I hope you're well, my friend. Paul Stalabras says, go on, Gary, show us your medal. Well, seeing as you asked, I do happen to have it to hand as well.
Dear, of course.
London Marathon. So there we go.
Lovely.
Yes, I did. There we go. Roy said Sean looked emotional when he got man of the match. Probably the first time he's looked emotional in his 22 years. Possibly.
He just looks serious. He just looks serious all the time.
He's got a Roy Keane thing going on, hasn't he? A Roy vibe. This is interesting from Flossie, and we'll make this a YouTube exclusive. Monster exclusion looks like a departure. Quite an interesting observation. Would we have had two centre halves on the bench though?
I don't know if we would, and I think Skabala has said, hasn't he, when he's been questioned about team selection, he has said, I've only got so many spaces I can fill. And does it all depend on what happens with other defenders coming and going as to whether we keep Lewis or not?
Yeah,
it's hard to say, really.
It is. Lewis wasn't at the awards last night either. Interesting. Do I have a pink Stone Island top? I do not, Roy. I do have a pink French Connection polo shirt, but I haven't been brave enough to wear it for a while. Mainly because it's a little bit too big for me now. I am lean and mean. Steve Barton says he would never leave his seat while the game's on. I'm a man of a certain age and don't have a choice around 35 minutes, depending on what I drink beforehand. Chris Keneally says, good evening, you two. Good to see you Saturday night, pal. Absolutely buzzing for next season. I do have vague recollections of talking to Chris Keneally Saturday night. Very vague recollections. I think he told me that I think his wife and daughter are running a marathon or the 10K. I think Julie and came up to talk to me. So my apologies for anyone who spoke to me after 6 o'clock on Saturday night, but it's all gone. Kev Barwise, I've got to pull this one up. It's praise for Emily. First time I've heard Emily, and she spoke more sense in one podcast than any Aluku has in her entire career. You're a valuable addition to the Stacy West team.
I'm not here to diss other female pundits, but thank you very much for that kind feedback. I'd be a bad feminist if I started chipping in on other women. But
am I allowed to comment on any Aluku?
Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I think she's fucking shit. To be honest,
I didn't rate her as a player, and that's enough for me. So.
Yeah. My old boss Ash is producer of a podcast, Andrew Gold, I think it is, and Eni Aluku did a podcast with him, and she just came across as one of the most awful people that I've ever met. Kind of arguing equality, but going against everything that equality is for. So even with the Ian Wright thing the other day, where she's saying Ian Wright shouldn't be dominating women's football with his punditry, it's like, but it shouldn't matter, male or female, it shouldn't matter. What he does for women's football is phenomenal. He helps to raise the profile. He's a good pundit. There should be female pundits on male football. It shouldn't be an issue, but with Eni Aluku, everything is an issue. My dad has said, nice to see a new face. Yeah, cheers, Dad. Never normally listens to the podcast.
Oh well, he's heard there was a new signing on, an exclusive.
That's why he's come on, because he thought we were going to sign Anthony Scully and Harry Anderson again. Right, there's lots of people arguing, discussing. Gary Nicholson says, well done on the marathon too, guys. Thank you. I don't like to talk about it, but yeah, that's brilliant. And apparently I'm slowly turning into Joey Barton. Sam Clucas there watching in the stands again. Now, this isn't going out. I'll tell you what, I'll pick up on that when we come back from the advert. There we go. Right, so we'll come back from the ad break. Hello and welcome back to the Stacy West podcast. What a great amount of fun we've had in the break. Roy Rogers says, don't think I've seen Gaz smile and laugh as much as he is doing tonight. So I've had a good weekend. 2 nights out on the spin, Roy.
I think he's just humouring me as well. Just to...
Yeah, but before next season where I just go in 2-footed completely on everything you say. That's rubbish. Yeah. Stop talking your rubbish. I'm going to get Ben on for an informed opinion. Now, Mostrom, Sam Clucas there again watching in the stands. That's a comment that he's made. There hasn't been a lot of information about Sam Clucas. So what I propose to do, I am going to message Mr. Scully, that's Liam, tomorrow. Let's see if we can't get a podcast exclusive, because I think there are a few things that some supporters would like to ask. There's obviously Sam Clucas. He's one thing that we want to talk about. John Booth has said, by the way, Sam was laughing and joking with all the other players on the lap post game with his kids in full kit. And he was at the awards dinner last night looking like he was having a good time as well. So it doesn't feel like there's an issue. But I think it's important to ask the question, isn't it?
I think it is. And there's rumours flying about around what his contract situation is, isn't there? And I think it all depends on what he was sold when he came to the club. Was he sold, yeah, you're going to be a long-term fixture here and we're going to play you week in, week out? Or was the deal transparent? That's what's important. And obviously we have no idea what that is. And I think we need to remember that when he was announced, there was a whole thing. I think this might have come from the Oldham side, perhaps, talking about pursuing opportunities outside of playing football.
Yep.
And we can't forget that. There may well be all sorts happening behind the scenes that we're not privy to. But yeah, there's an opportunity to ask questions. I think that would be good for the fans, because there's lots of speculation. There's lots of people who are happy, unhappy, don't care. There's all these kind of different emotions floating about, and it does just create division at the moment, I think. Yeah,
I agree. And I think it's important that we get an opportunity to ask those questions. And
For
I'm
sure.
sure we haven't had Liam on for a while, and he used to come on all the time. So I'll message Liam tomorrow, and we'll see what we can get set up. Now we've got, how long did we do on the break? 6 minutes. So we've got about 20 minutes. And what we decided to do for the second half of this show, we were quite keen to do some of our own awards. Now, you get the Player of the Year award, and it's, you know who's won it, and you get the leading goal scorer, you know who's won it, and the community champion, you don't know, but it's, you know, it's great, by the way, that Freddie Draper got it and Lasse Sorensen got it, but it's not one that the fans are going to go, who might it be? Because it's, you know, it's who's done the most in the community. It's a great thing for them to do. And as JRS or JR Special said earlier, we created an award for Sean Roughan, and rightly so. But we've created a handful of awards that we are going to give out tonight, and we have let people sponsor them basically for free. Rather, they don't know that they've done it yet, but we've picked some names out for some awards as well. Now, I am happy, or we are both happy, if you would like to join in the comments with any of the awards. Just quickly, by the way, Mark Ballard's comment here, just want to mention this. He's put that Wrexham had their own annual memorial. The Bradford colliery disaster, 266 men were killed in the mine. Many of them had switched shifts so they could attend the Wrexham match. And again, that's kind of a reflection of football, paying respects to people from many years ago who, you know, we're all the same. The times may change, but our affinity to our clubs do not. So our thoughts are with anybody connected to that. Right. From one serious segment into a slightly less serious segment. Shall we get stuck in to the awards? I see a smile on Emily's face here. I think she's going to enjoy these. So the first one, it's an easy one. It's the Lasse Sorensen Award for the best celebration, named after Lasse for the Imp celebration last season. And I shall let Emily give her choice first.
Yep. So the winner for me of best celebration, he's got a funny name, and he did a celebration that matched it. It's Eric Ring. I just realised that if you're listening to this and not watching it on YouTube, you've got no idea what I'm doing, but I'm holding up I'm making a phone symbol with my hand and holding it up to my ear. If you know the celebration, you'll know. It's just fun, isn't it? His name's Eric Ring, and he did a telephone. That's all it needs for me. Just a little bit of fun. He answered the call when we needed a good celebration.
Oh no.
That's what you're going to get from me, guys, on these podcasts.
Why? You didn't do that on your trial, did you?
Do you know, I was desperate to get an Eric Ring pun in there, but it just didn't quite happen. So I'm pleased I've done it now. So plenty more where that came from. He hit the right note, didn't he? Sorry. I'll stop now. I'll stop.
Now, there's one of two, and I'm going to change my opinion. So the honourable mention is Sam Clucas against Mansfield, because everybody loves a shithouse celebration. But I'm actually having Jovan. I can't remember the game, but he had taken so much stick, scored the goal, and then he stuck his fingers in his ears and celebrated in front of his supporters. I don't think it was basically celebrating in front of the whole fan base. I think it was more just saying, you know, I'll ignore the criticism and I'll get on with my game. Nothing for a young man who's taken an unbelievable amount of criticism when he's had a really good season for us. I actually quite like to see that celebration. And I think at the time, if I remember correctly, the club played it down a little bit. Was it a late winner? It was a late goal, I seem to think. I can't remember who it was against. But
was it
yeah, I'm not sure.
Away at Rotherham, was it?
Ooh, no. Was it?
I don't know if it was an away game.
That was
in the
black
kit,
wasn't it?
Was it in the black kit? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It must have been, unless it was the late winner. He scored against Leighton Orient. I think he did it against Orient as well. Do you know what? I think it must have been Rotherham, because since then he hasn't. Yeah, we'll go with Rotherham. But I think the club actually took it off the channels. I think somebody posted it, or it was posted at first, and then I think it was taken off because I think, you know, the club were acutely aware of how these things can be interpreted. But I think, from my point of view, I liked it. Yes, Jovan. Give a little bit back.
A bit of have that, wasn't it? A little bit of have that. Yeah. And I think it shows that he cares as well, in a kind of way to go, you know, because some people could probably be really knocked by the criticism that he got, and to go, do you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong, actually, and show you. yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, that was that was on my short list. So a good one.
What's on the shorts? Now I can't remember what I picked for this next award, which is a little bit worrying, but it's the award for the best moment that wasn't a goal, and we've named it after Andy Pearson for no reason other than we like Andy Pearson, because face to face I was sat talking to him in the treaty, and he was so full of positivity about the team. And then I went online at the end of the day, and there was no positivity at all from him. And it's just, he is a consistently inconsistent man, which is perfect for a consistently inconsistent football team. So this is the Andy Pearson Award for the best moment that wasn't a goal. And I shall once again let you go first.
Okay, maybe this will jog your memory if you're trying to remember yours. So I started thinking about this and I thought, I can't think of anything. And then I had a little chat with my dad and we ran through a few games. And it was a toss-up between this moment that I'm going to choose as my winner and somebody falling over, which I think probably sums up the season. But I have picked Leyton Orient at home. The final moments of the game, I think George Wickens made an excellent save and Conor McGrandles cleared one off the line, which meant we won the game 2-1, and we went fourth. So I think that was, not a goal, saving a goal, kept us getting the 3 points, put us into fourth place, and then sort of all kind of went downhill from that point, really. It all sort of trailed off. But that was the pinnacle. You know, that was that moment where we secured the 3 points and we were in that position just before everything started to tail off. So I've chosen that.
Brilliant. Well, I've chosen something that didn't even happen on the pitch. I have chosen Steve Evans' exit against Shrewsbury. It was one of my favourite moments of the season, was watching him walk down the stairs with 9,000 supporters watching, thinking, if he goes, it's going to be like a massive game of 10-pin bowling. He's going to go down there and he's going to take out seats. He's going to take out people, a dugout, some sponsorship boards. He got down and then he got the famous chant of Steve Evans, you're a self-fornicator. And just as he disappeared down the tunnel, his hand came up in a wave. And it reminded me, I'm going to show my age now, of stars in their eyes when he used to go, tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be. And just as they'd walk out, they would be waving like that. And I can imagine the other side as he was coming in going, I'm going to be eating pies. And he comes waving in. So that was my,
good moment. I think fair play to him for that little wave.
Yeah, I think so as well. He's still a massive, massive bellend.
Absolutely.
So the next one, don't know if he listens or not, but this is the Martin Green Award for the worst away trip, because Martin says that I never go away. So I thought it would be ironic for me to pick one of the away games I have been to as the worst away trip. So it's the Martin Green Award for the worst away trip. And I will hand over to you, Emily, again, because I don't want to steal the one that I think you were going to pick.
Well, I've picked another one from what I thought you were going to pick. So I'm happy for you to go first, because I can come in afterwards with my kind of second choice, because I think the one you're going to say, if it's the same one I'm thinking, then I will probably agree.
We have had some bad away trips this season in terms of results. John Booth says Crawley on a Tuesday night. Steve, who was sat next to me, said the same, Crawley on a Tuesday night, terrible away trip. I'm picking Rotherham away, and there is a reason for this, because I went with Statman, Chris, and we got to Rotherham, and rather than trying to find a pub, rather than kind of doing anything too much, Chris wanted to get in and watch the warm-up. It was a bitterly cold night. I dressed inappropriately. I was freezing my tits off. We stood watching the warm-up in quite steep stands, and I have a little bit of vertigo, so I wasn't entirely comfortable until the stand filled up. And then the bloody floodlights went off, and we had to wait for another hour before kickoff. And by the end of it, honestly, there was bits of me shriveled that I didn't even know I had. I was just absolutely frozen. And then it was a shit game. Jacko gets taken out after 10 minutes with what was an assault by Odafin, if I remember correctly. And we ended up losing a game that we were still arguably at least worth a point in. It was just a crap away day. And then we get back at nearly midnight and we're up the next day for work. Well, we would have been if I had a regular job. So yeah, that's my worst away trip.
Yeah, I was gonna. That was gonna be my first choice as well, for all of the same reasons. And we had a really long walk back to the car, just to add, kind of insult to injury. But the game that I've chosen for this was Birmingham away in the FA Cup. And that was because it was absolutely freezing. It was that spell that we had where it was just ridiculous minus cold, horrible numbers. It was absolutely freezing. And the stand was dripping. It must have been thawing out from the snow and the ice and whatever that was on it. And it was just dripping constantly. So we were getting dripped on. We were freezing. And I remember towards the end of that game, the team rallied a bit and they were pushing for an equaliser. And I was thinking, if this goes to extra time or to penalties, I don't think I can stand here. I can't sit here any longer. I can't see it out. It was absolutely freezing. So I'm picking that one.
Excellent. Steve Barton says Peterborough for him. Yet curiously, I did a piece for a Stockport County website earlier, and I picked Peterborough as one of my favourite away days because it was nice sunshine. We got sat in the pub there on the river and had a few drinks, and we got a result there, which we never normally get. I know it was only 1-1. I quite enjoyed the Peterborough game. So funny enough, interpretation. So next up, for obvious reasons, we've got the Jeff Hughes Award for the most improved player of the season. I will go first.
Go for it.
Jovan. It's that simple. I think he's just got better and better as the season's gone on. So he's my pick.
Yeah. I thought you'd pick Jovan, and so I thought I'd pick somebody else. And I've looked at it as a season in isolation. And I've picked Ethan Hamilton because I think he came back from injury, had a slow start, but I do think that the last few games that we've seen him in, he's been that Ethan Hamilton that we know and love before he had his long injury layoff. So hopefully we'll see more of that next season as well. But yeah, Ethan Hamilton is my pick for this season.
Really good pick. I really like Ethan actually as well. People say it's not luck, but obviously with kind of thanks to some overseas sponsors sponsoring a player, I get to go on their behalf to these sponsors events. I was really lucky to be at the foundation yesterday. It's kind of with the LSST thing or the Priory thing that I do. We sometimes meet players. And of all the players that I've met at this squad, and there are some nice guys to be fair in this squad, but Adam Jackson, Ethan Hamilton are right up there. You probably throw Tom Bayliss into that, but every time I've met Ethan Hamilton, he's been such a nice guy. And I think I said on the podcast, we gave him man of the match against Huddersfield. I mean, it should have been Sean Rowan, but we gave it to Ethan Hamilton because he was the best player on the night. But it was just as he was leaving when he said, my granddad reads everything that you write and you've been mostly fair. And I thought I've been pretty harsh saying, you haven't been as good as you were. And I think, you're quite right in picking him. I think that he's somebody that could be massive for us next season. So next up, we have the Archie Mayer and James Brown Award for players you already forgot. And if you don't know who Archie Mayer and James Brown are, that's the irony, or that's the joke, rather. It's probably not irony in the strictest sense. So which players have we already forgot? We made this award because you wanted to give a player an award, didn't we?
Yeah, I wanted to give this player an award. So we invented this especially for him. And this award goes to Saxon Early. And I've got nothing more to say about him other than that.
No.
He came and went, didn't he?
He did. Do you know what? I was going to give it to somebody else, and I'm not. I'm going to make it a unanimous Saxon Early Award. So next year it will be called the Archie Mayer, James Brown and Saxon Early Award for players you already forgot. Let's look at the time. We've got time for a couple more. So the Theo Archibald Award for a loan player we're most excited to get back. Because when Theo Archibald went out on loan, I was really excited to get him back, and he never came back. Which was pretty frustrating. So the Theo Archibald Award for the lone player we're most excited to get back. I am going to quite obviously say Rob Street because he scored 12 goals since January. He's been outstanding for Doncaster. I think a Doncaster fan said he's earned them 15 points with his goals this season. So he hasn't just scored goals at the ends of a 5-0 win or whatever. Playing in the same formation, 4-2-3-1, playing in the same position as James Collins. I just think we've now seen the potential in Rob Street. I was critical of him when we signed him. I was critical of him at Cheltenham and at Shrewsbury as well. I'd kind of watched his career trajectory when he went on loan from Crystal Palace. And I am so hopeful that this spell in Doncaster has not only proved me wrong, but also doesn't prove to be a false dawn, a little bit like kind of Freddie coming back and then struggling to impose himself. I wonder if we might be getting a player back next season who's going to show the reason why he was given a 4-year contract. So I'm quite excited to see Rob Street in a Lincoln shirt.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Completely agree. I wanted to pick somebody different to that. So I have picked JJ McKiernan. I'm looking forward to seeing JJ McKiernan come back. You know, a lot has been said in the media and by the club as well, in that, you know, they are delighted that they're able to loan our players out now to players in our league. They're not going to kind of non-league, even lower. You know, we've got a player who's playing, we've been playing regularly in our league. And I thought JJ McKiernan was good before we loaned him out for us. I thought he played really well for us. So he's been able to get, you know, regular game time. I'm looking forward to see what he can do for us next season with all that kind of all those minutes under his belt.
I really liked him, and he was massively unlucky because if I remember correctly, he came on against Morecambe in the Mickey Mouse Trophy and was injured and had to go off. I'm sure I've got that right. He came on against Man City, scored. He looks like he's got some exquisite skills. Probably looked a tiny bit, not lightweight, but like he was taking time to get up to League One level. So having played at Burton and helped play a role in their Great Escape, he's a player that could come back and do something for us. He could play anywhere across that three that are going to be behind James Collins. It's unlikely that he would displace a kind of a regular winger, whether it be Jovan or Rico or Eric Ring, but it's just another player that I think that we can throw into the mix. And look, Michael Scobal has proven that he likes to chop and change from a Saturday to a Tuesday to keep players fresh and fit. And so I think that somebody like JJ McKiernan could well be afforded more game time. The one thing I would say is that towards the end of his Burton spell, the goals and assists have been a little slower in coming. But I guess if we'd seen him go there and get 6 goals and 5 assists since Christmas, we wouldn't be talking about him coming back. We'd be talking about selling him to a championship club. So, but what's really encouraging is the 2 players we're most excited to get back are the 2 players that have got long-term contracts who we know have got the ability or have got the expectation rather to come in and form part of the first team squad.
Yeah.
So the next one.
The next one. I'm going to take the lead on this one, if that's all right, because this is a very
forceful.
Well, this is a very special award. This is the Ben Toffolo Award, named after our very own Ben and Harry Toffolo, for the unhealthiest interest in a player. And I'm going to put you forward for this one, Gaz. I'm going to put you and your unhealthy obsession with Sean Roughan forward for the Ben Toffolo Award. Is it up there with winning your marathon medal?
I want a certificate for this. I'll take it. I get a bee in my bonnet about players that I think are underrated. I just think Sean Roughan is, and probably not so much now. He's got the 46 games and he's got the award. I think there's more people becoming aware of it, but perhaps halfway through the season there was a little bit of an issue. A few people liking that, Roy Rogers and Steve Barton both having chuckles at that. I do have somebody else to nominate for an unhealthy interest in a former player or manager, and I don't know if he listens again. If Emma Krellin's listening, she'll specifically like this. I'm going to nominate Marcus Clayson because he has got to have an alert set up so that whenever anybody types in Appleton on Twitter, he immediately gets a ping to his phone. Now, I'm sure that could have All Saints implications somewhere down the line as well. But I don't see a news piece about Michael Appleton that Marcus isn't on. And it's brilliant because then it means I can go on and have my unhealthy obsession with Mark Kennedy fed. And we can continue arguing about 2 managers who will never be in the dugout again at Lincoln City.
Yeah.
So I really like that. Okay, this is a good one. We've got 2 more awards. This award, I forgot who I made this award for somebody, and I know it was now. This is preparation for you. So I'm going to go to the Chris Maguire Award for the former player we were happiest to see fail this season. We say former player or manager. Did you pick anybody?
I picked a manager, and I think we can all guess who it is. I picked Mark Kennedy. He's already been mentioned a couple of times on this podcast. I picked Mark Kennedy. Just funny. I wasn't particularly a fan of, never warmed to him, is the only way I can put it. I never warmed to him as a person. And not that I met him, just through media stuff. And yeah, for him to get the Swindon job and then I was actually Googling it before this just to make sure I'd got all my facts right. And the article said he was sacked over after a late night phone call. That's even more funny. So, yeah, it's Mark Kennedy for me.
So for me, it is Danny Mandroiu. Now, it's quite ironic, isn't it, that we picked Mark Kennedy and Danny Mandroiu, who split opinion when Mark Kennedy left. And some people fell down, as I did, on the side of Danny Mandroiu. And I had just chatting to some people, I understand that the potential contract negotiations for Danny Mandroiu were a little bit difficult. He was somebody I desperately tried to warm to. I think on his day he was sublime, but he was just on his day. He was very rarely on his day, unfortunately. And obviously he went back to Ireland because he wanted to play a big role in the Europa Conference League, or whatever it is the quite shitty teams end up dropping into. Is that the one Man United are in? That's the Europa League, isn't it?
The Europa Conference League. Is it the conference? Yeah, the
Conference League.
Yeah.
Because Chelsea are in it. And he was just, he scored on his debut and it looked like the king had come home, and then he's been coming off the bench. And I just kind of, it justifies the fact that we let him go. And I did question it at the time. I'm always happy to be proven wrong. I thought he had the potential to be a good player for us, but it just didn't happen enough for me. And so to see him go, if he'd gone on and been a massive success and scored against Chelsea and made the headlines, it would have reflected on the decision that we made. But instead, I think that the decision not to kind of keep offering him more money, etc., and to let him go was the right decision. And this is
quickly. Sorry, I was going to say, I wonder if it's a really interesting thing to think about. Mark Kennedy and Danny Mandroiu, sort of, they clashed, obviously, didn't they? There was a lot of he kind of came out and spoke about him in interviews and stuff. They sort of, they kind of took each other down with themselves. Do you know what I mean? They kind of were the downfalls of each other after that, which I just think was just interesting. They obviously had a clash and it ended up badly for both of them.
Like the end of Game of Thrones, where Sandor and Gregor Clegane were fighting each other, and they both ended up falling into the fire. And
I don't watch it, but the falling into the fire thing, yes, that's sort of what I was picturing. But I don't watch Game of Thrones.
No, it's good.
No,
I really enjoy.
I don't like things with goblins in.
Fair enough, but then you don't go anywhere on a holiday where you have to take your own cutlery either, do you? So
no, I don't. No, I do not.
You're quite a specific line of life rules, which I think are going to be really interesting to discover as we go through the podcast. It sounds like an extra show of The World According to Emily. What I would say is that Mark Kennedy also called out Jovan Makama and questioned his attitude in the 2-0 win against Wolves, which was on the Tuesday before the Burton game. So I think probably Danny Mandroiu was a little more in the right than Mark Kennedy. Maybe, I don't know. Or, frankly, beyond this award, care either. So there we go. And finally, this is a good one. And the person in the title we are not allowed to pick. So this is the Steve Evans Award for the best Panto villain. And I've left this one to the end because football is a pantomime. It's a show. And as the arguments in the comments attest to, some people are entertained by it, some people are bored by it, but football is a show. And every show has heroes and villains, protagonists and antagonists. And so we have both picked, I believe, an antagonist, a pantomime villain from this season that we just love to hate. And I shall allow you to go first on this one.
Well, I was going to say, I think we may have picked something of a similar vein. I've picked a collective of pantomime villains, which yours may be an individual who's part of that collective. So maybe you go first, and then I can kind of sum it up.
So I've picked James McLean.
Oh, we've picked completely different ones then. That's fine.
Brilliant. That's fantastic.
We do communicate before this goes live, but no, never mind.
We do. I picked James McLean because I actually really like to dislike him. And the kind of dislike that I have for him isn't born out of any sort of real dislike. Like Steve Evans, I dislike because he's a crook and he's a prick and he's all of the bad things. But James McLean actually is just standing by one of his beliefs. And I had a couple of messages over the week because I said it was his decision not to wear a poppy. We should respect that. And people came back to me on DMs and said, Gary, you live in RAF County with our supporters of the 617. You know, we are a county of servicemen. There are a lot of veterans, etc., who listen to the podcast. And I absolutely agree with that. I'm somebody that will pay respects whenever they're due. Done work for kind of veteran charities, etc., in the past. So it wasn't about me respecting his decision not to wear a poppy. It's about me respecting his right to make that decision and not be barracked en masse for it. When some of the same people were perhaps saying, let's keep taking the knee out of bending the knee or whatever it was for the Black Lives Matter. Why have we got politics in football? And then, but he should be wearing a poppy. Now, I get why people boo him, and I'm not saying that shouldn't happen either, because at the end of the day, football is a show and you have to interact with it. But I just thought he was a classic shithouse on Saturday. Every time he was booed, he was pointing to his League One badge and then pointing to us. I hated that. Brilliant. Like Jody Jones, when Jody Jones scored just before he did his ACL and he celebrated in front of everybody. If you've got it, flaunt it, kind of thing. And then he obviously created their second goal, celebrated in front of the Lincoln fans. But for the grace of God, he could have been a Lincoln player. He had one day with us, didn't he? And then went homesick, he claimed, but it was probably because he had to play under Chris Sutton. So my pantomime villain of the season is James McLean.
Yes. And I will say there are a collection of players who are shithouses, but you'd have them in your team. Yeah. You love to hate them on a match day when they're playing against you, but if they were offered to come to your club, you'd have them. There is a little pool like that.
Let me ask you then, because we've named this the Chris Maguire Award, because he was said shithouse, but also, if somebody offered me him back now, I would go absolutely no chance whatsoever. So if somebody offered you James McLean now, would you take him, or do you just think that the baggage would be a little bit too much?
I think I'd take him. I think as a player, decent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good player.
Yeah, he is.
Squad.
I think he would divide a lot of our supporters, because I think particularly with Lincolnshire and Lincoln having the strong connections with the RAF and his choice not to wear a poppy, there would need to be some sort of PR done around that. And I don't think he's the type of player we'd ever sign. I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't take him, just because it would just be another reason for our supporters to be at each other's throats. And when we're arguing about whether Mark Kennedy and Michael Skubala are the same or not on the 46th game of a season that we've finished in the top half of the third division for a third year in a row, it's quite easy for our fans to fall out. So who are your collective of you? Who are you picking for this award?
Yeah, so for this award, I have picked the Exeter City coaching team, because I'll keep it short, because I know we've been talking a lot. So the game that we played at their place at St James's Park, one of their coaches got sent off for holding onto the ball in the dugout and having a bit of an altercation with, I think might have been Dom Jeffries or somebody. So he got a red card for that, which I just thought was pantomime villain fodder. And then when they came and played at Sincil Bank, Gary Caldwell got a red card, and he blamed it on his Scottish accent, which is amusing as well as being a bit of a pantomime villain. So I'm picking Exeter City's coaching team as my villain.
I do think it was hilarious that he blamed his Scottish accent, because it is. I mean, I love Scotland. I mean, I'm pretty ambivalent. I don't care about it one way or the other. I am planning on going around Scotland, so I don't want to hack off a whole nation of people or appear in any way whatsoever xenophobic. But it is an accent that you do hear, and you instantly think that somebody may want to fight a little. It can sound quite aggressive at times, so I can understand where it came from, and I think him using that as a defense was quite amusing. And I think it was David Perkins, wasn't it, that was sent off for them
yes,
at
been,
their place, and a ginger fella, Ryan Woods, maybe, I think, was sent off as well. So 3 red cards for Exeter in 2 games. So yeah, I'll take that. I'll have the coaching staff right. Unbelievably, we have run over, and earlier we were before we came on air, we were discussing whether we were actually going to get an hour's material or not. So we
invented
have
awards to make sure that we would. We would, didn't we? And here we are.
Let's make up some more awards. So there we go. Season over, done and dusted. We will be doing something of a season review where we probably look back on some of our favourite moments. That might make up next week's podcast. Could be that we get the retained list out before then. But in the meantime, Emily, how was your first time?
Yeah, really good. Thank you for having me. Yeah, again, it's a real pleasure to be here and to get, like I said, get to talk about Lincoln City. So I'm just really grateful. And it was good fun. We had a bit of a laugh along the way, didn't we? Once we got the football bit out the way, we had a bit of a laugh. So thank you. Thank you very much.
No worries. Sounds like most away days, to be fair. So that was episode 381 of the Stacy West podcast. The big news is that we do have a new team member. There will be 5 of us next year, but there will be a structure. So there will be 2 regular presenters, and then the pundits will, of course, rotate. The season is over. Hollywood has moved on. And what will be left in League One next season, it'll be interesting to see. We know we've got more local derbies in Doncaster and Bradford. We've got some long trips in Cardiff City and Plymouth, but whatever happens, one thing is guaranteed: people will argue in the comments of the Stacy West podcast. Thank you for listening. We will be back with you next week, but in the meantime, up the imps.
Up the imps.